Hey out there Akronites, welcome once again to Around Akron with Blue Green, and we have a jam-packed episode ahead of us today. On this episode, I'm going to head over to North Hill and visit the No-Tique pop-up restaurant. I sit down with a NASA photographer, Jef Janis, and I meet with Mayor Dan Horrigan to talk about the reopening of Main Street and all the amazing things that are going on down there. Now to kick this show off today, I'm going to head over to North Hill and meet up with Katie Beck, the Executive Director of the North Hill Community Development Center. And we're going to talk all about the amazing things that are going on there. Let's go see what Katie Beck's all about.
The Exchange House opened in 2017 from a Night Cities Challenge grant by the Better Block Foundation with the goal of taking advantage of excess housing stock in order to create a multi-use community space and international hostel. I started there in 2017 when it first opened as an AmeriCorps Vista. It was sort of a blank canvas with an idea to work for, about, and with community. So a lot of my first year was spent building relationships, learning about the history of the different communities that are within North Hill, and just getting a better understanding of what the needs are of the community. Over the last 3.5 years, the Exchange House has hosted, over 200 events a year before COVID. We've had sewing classes for women, Black Box theater performances, community meetings, spiritual gatherings, personal parties, really everything you could think of that the community wants to use the house for. The second floor has 3 rooms on Airbnb where we have a lot of travelers from out of town come and stay here, and it's a really exciting opportunity because we get to recommend different stores and restaurants in the neighborhood. So it's sort of like cultural tourism, and it also helps us to generate enough revenue to pay for the overhead expenses of the house. When the Exchange House first opened in 2017, this backyard space was a parking lot with a fence and bushes. So one of the first things that happened was we tore down the fence so that there would be a clear thoroughfare for neighbors to walk through. Then about a year later, we built out the backyard with benches, a stage, market stalls, in order to accommodate the needs of the community. So we've had festivals here like Hot Pepper Fest and North Hill Music Festival. We've had markets here, wedding receptions, and one of my favorite programs called Multilingual Meals. Multilingual Meals was in conjunction with On the Table Greater Akron Initiative. And so our spin on it was to host conversations in 9 different languages where community members could come and have those same conversations that were happening throughout Akron in English, but do it in their native language. So we hired facilitators, or culture brokers as we like to call them, to lead those conversations, and then got the notes from what they talked about in English. So a lot of that feedback that we received from our Multilingual Meal series helps to inform the decisions we make as a community-based organization. And then our third space that will be opening next year is called the Market House, and it is going to be a micro-business incubator for women-owned and women-led businesses. We are partnering with some organizations in order to augment curriculum for aspiring entrepreneurs to assist specifically new American women with starting their own businesses or building on businesses that they've been working on for a while. And the Market House will be open to all female entrepreneurs, but specifically for that programming, we're trying to augment that curriculum in order to fit their needs because there are different barriers specifically within the American community. On the second floor, there will be 3 office/studio spaces for rent, and then the third floor will be a maker space. So on the first and third floor, we're gonna have some different equipment like laser cutter, 3D printer, that kind of thing, so folks from the community can come and make things together and spend time together in an intimate space. before COVID, we had a ton of different community events and gatherings inside the house and in the backyard. But when the pandemic hit, we had to cut that back and only allow Airbnb in the exchange house. However, we did reallocate a grant in order to compensate community leaders, but also we were able to call on those young leaders in the neighborhood in order to step up and provide a service that wasn't being provided at the time. When COVID first hit, there weren't documents that were translated in languages specifically in Akron. And so by creating those videos and making it really more of a personal video from a community member, it turned out to be very effective, where a lot of folks throughout the state of Ohio ended up using those in order to communicate with their own New American communities. So we came up with the idea of No-Tique pop-up, especially in the face of COVID, as an opportunity for food entrepreneurs to sell their cuisine in a space that cuts red tape and can also be safe by offering carry-out only and curbside service. And this was all inspired from those relationships and partnerships that we had from the community in the past. When the idea first came up, I had 4 people in mind that I knew personally that I knew would jump on this opportunity. So when we got the keys to the space, we had to sort of assess what was in the kitchen and decide how the programming structure would work. We're still in the process of making that program structure perfect. It has been a journey in terms of experimenting, failing, trying again, but we've been overwhelmed with the support from the community, buying the food, and really financially empowering the food entrepreneurs to come through.
Now, we're gonna visit the No-Tique pop-up restaurant, and I'm gonna sit down with Samu Win and talk about his journey to the United States and the food he loves to prepare.
I was born in Thailand refugee camp, but my parents are originally from Burma, northwest Myanmar. They moved to Thailand refugee camp because of war back in Myanmar. They can't stay there because of I would call it ethnic cleansing. Because the government dictator kind of wanted to take over the current land, that the current people have no choice. They have to flee their homeland and move it to Thailand refugee camp. I came to America in 2011 with my mother and my sister. I was brought to America by numerous reasons, primarily to find better life, a better career, a meaningful career, and a place that you can call home. Back in refugee camp, I didn't have had opportunity to go to school. The only way that my family can earn income is by selling foods. So when I was younger, I used to help my mother and my grandmother in the kitchen prepare foods, and sometimes I have to go shop in the market to get the fresh ingredients. And yeah, growing up in refugee camp was very challenging for me, because refugee camp is not a place that where you can get free education, healthcare opportunities to get good jobs, and also refugee camp is not a place that you can call home. I learned to cook from my mother and my grandmother. When I was younger, I watched them cook in the kitchen. And when I came to America, I started to cook when I was about 16 years old. I know that I'm getting a little bit older, so I have to take responsibility for my families. So sometimes my mother, when she gets home from work, she kind of she basically has time to cook. So I want to take a responsibility. I want to make sure that she gets something to eat when she gets home. Usually after that, I know that in Akron, I have passion of cooking, because Akron is a very diverse place in Akron. So I want to make sure that I want to share my traditional cuisines to all the Akron communities. So it made me kind of, wanted to. That's why I joined the No-Tique pop-up restaurant. I want to make connection with the community. I believe that food is another way. It's like a universal language that when you can bring all people together by just sharing food with each other. When I make something, we focus on like four flavors. There are four focus on salty, sweetness, spicy, and sour. So those are the key ingredients that always has to be on the correct cuisine. Without those flavors, the food might not taste very well and balanced. So working at the No-Tique pop-up restaurant gave me a good opportunity and connections. I know that I always like to cook in my house with tiny kitchen. At North Hill pop-up restaurant, it has a bigger commercial kitchen, so you have more space to move around, and yeah, I had the bigger difference when I started working there for the first time, it was insane because I never had a chance to work at commercial kitchen, but it was a great experience. A great opportunity for me to cook for other people here in Akron. So No-Tique pop-up restaurant is like a carry out, and each No-Tique pop-up restaurant offers artists in Akron the opportunity to cook for the community here, and also we are kind of do rotations. It's kind of rotate every weekend for each different artist to come use the kitchen and to cook their cuisine and share with the community.
Next, we're going to meet up with a spaceman of sorts. Well, actually, he's a photographer. He's an amazing photographer that works for NASA. Let's go see what Jef Janis is all about.
I was given a camera by a teacher in junior high school, and it was because I draw and paint and do other things. I being a little, in them times we wouldn't have called ADD, but I couldn't stay still. So she would give me a camera and told me to take pictures to have reference to draw and paint when I sat in class. So the camera kind of came about at a young age just to kind of be able to have things when I got in class to take the pictures and sit there and draw them or paint them. But the love of that kind of came from sitting on my grandmother's lap looking through albums. She had a lot of family albums, and we have a very extensive family, but it was something she would love to do, is sit there and go through the old albums, and I kind of loved where it would take her. All pencils, you're just writing with light. I don't care if it's a Nikon pencil or a Fuji pencil or a Canon, it's just a pencil. It's graphite, it's charcoal. There's a different pencil for each job. It's a tool. Don't get caught up in, oh, I gotta have the best camera to do this or the best camera. I should be able to give you a disposable camera and you should be able to do great pictures with it. It's just a pencil. If you can't understand that basic tool, having one with all the bells and the whistles, not gonna make you better. If I put Jordans on, I can't dunk. A lot of the portraits come from friends, from people I know. I find it a lot easier to photograph people once there's already some sort of connection or some sort of interest for me. So a lot of it are people that I find interesting, especially when it comes to musicians and other artists. If I love the music, if I love what they're doing, if I love their poetry, it's easier for me to be almost infatuated with the person. You want to capture them, and I'm a big fan of the moment in between photographs. So generally, when you're taking a person's portrait, we all kind of tense up when we see the camera. I like that moment after that. I teach as a teaching artist at the Cleveland Print Room. They see, especially young inner city, young people of color, seeing another person of color being successful at something of that nature, it gives them, a little bit more hope in my eyes. I mean, I didn't find Gordon Parks and other black photographers until college. I didn't know about Basquiat or any of those people. You're not gonna hear about those, in your normal travels. So to meet people that you can look at their IG and I can be a bridge between them and other studios and other artists and other types of things, it's important, I mean, why learn all of this and not give it back? It's not a secret, it's not something that I wanna keep to myself. I wanna pass it on. I mean, it's not like me teaching another young photographer how to do what I do is gonna lessen what I do. It's only gonna keep it going. If there's no more people that know darkroom goes away. There's no more young students that learn 4x5 and 8x10 field cameras. It goes away, and we don't want it to go away. There are only 3 of us at NASA that are NASA photographers, photographers at NASA. And within the 3 of us, there's a certain amount of each base. So those positions don't come up very often just because who's giving their job up at NASA, So when the position became available, I applied for it, and through a strenuous process, I was lucky enough to become a photographer at NASA, and never would have saw it coming. I mean, that's something as a kid, we know NASA Glen is here, we know Plum Brook is down in Sandusky, we know those places are there, but they seem a little out of reach. And being a kid growing up a Trekkie and in the Star Wars and all that types of stuff, the idea of even getting to see things that I see or photograph those things didn't even seem like something I'd ever do in my career. So to be this late at life and get to do that is pretty awesome, I mean, before all of this started, the last thing I worked on was taking pictures of the Orion shuttle, in Plum Brook Station, standing in the room with it, And every time I pulled on the base, I had to pinch myself, Everything that we take, we're credited with, and everything ends up as part of it goes into our archives. It's forever. So, that's probably the coolest part as a father, knowing that things that I do will end up in the Smithsonian. They'll end up on, that it's part of our history. Like, I document history for NASA. Like that's exactly how I view it. I walk into rooms and I shoot things that are going on that will be a part of history. The first day I was there, they handed me moon rocks and was like, if anybody ever asks you, you let them know that you held actual moon rocks. We did not fake it, we went to the moon. And like they're joking about this stuff and they have a sense of humor, but the realization is that you're holding rocks that came from the moon, man. Like I saw spacesuits that went to space. That stuff is there. I've stood in the vacuum chamber in Sandusky, and it's the biggest vacuum chamber, and it's where we test everything. Nothing goes to space without coming through Ohio, and I don't think people realize that. Nothing's gonna leave unless it comes through us testing it here. It has to go to Sandusky. It has to come here. We do a lot here, and I don't think we're recognized for a lot of that. Sometimes how great things are, happening in Ohio. We do a lot of great stuff here. So.
Now to wrap this show up, I'm gonna head to downtown Akron, and I'm gonna meet up with Mayor Dan Horrigan and talk about the reopening of Main Street and all the amazing things that are going on down there. Let's go meet up with Mayor Horrigan and see what he's all about.
Really the goal was to make it pedestrian friendly, bike friendly, all of that friendly modes of transportation. Buses still come down here, you can still drive down here. Like I said, it was never our busiest street. Maybe 50 some odd years ago there was a significant amount of traffic. When we looked at flow, we wanted to make sure with the towpath being so close, accessing all of that, everybody having that accessibility when it comes to even different types of switch for those that are in wheelchairs and people that are blind, having those audible switches. It's got to be pedestrian friendly, people friendly, to be able to walk easily from place to place. That includes, whether it's from restaurant or to event or to other event place, designing that. And that's what really took some of that time, is how we designed a space that looks like, and people can go from one end to another And I think in an easier way to be able to do that, and that's what's the exciting part, because you can do it, and you kind of see that down here now. It's exciting because, you know, traffic can finally flow. It's a relief to the businesses, and now we can get customers down here. Even given the pandemic, you know, there's been a tremendous amount of support from the city, county, and the chamber to try to get those CARES Act dollars back into some of these businesses. And many of these many of these restaurants, they've gone to extraordinary measures, you know, to make sure that they keep their customers safe and their patrons safe. And so to get the traffic back open really is a significant milestone. Now that we're going in the one direction, we have one small section to do as we just started. So Main Street looking like this and having traffic and pedestrian flow, it's exciting for downtown. The roundabout was always, you know, when it first came up, people were thinking, well, why do we want a roundabout? It really is to keep traffic moving, and once people get used to roundabouts, they're pretty simple to traverse. See, Main Street isn't our most trafficked street. You know, you get Broadway and High and probably Exchange that have more, but we wanted to do a sense to kind of give a central focus point, especially with the roundabout, and then doing art in the middle, because public art is important. And then the Rubber Worker project came along, and it was, you know, easy to get behind that, to honor those people that worked in the rubber factories for generations in the city of Akron. So to honor them in the city of Akron and in the middle, I thought was an appropriate tribute to them and their sacrifice that they made really for the future generations. I've seen them all over the country. Obviously, cities have done this a little bit earlier. We had an idea about a year ago to be able to do it. Finally worked through the agreement with Spin to be able to do it. And I really see them all over the place. They started really kind of small with the university and just down here, but if you notice now, you start to see them up in Highland Square, you start to see them a little bit in Middlebury, you start to see them in North Hill, and I think that's the exciting part because people are using them to get from one place to another, and so it's just not kind of a novelty. People are using that as transportation. It's kind of a unique concept. You see this in a lot of other cities where you have event areas where you're able to go from one place to another, and it's a downtown outdoor recreation area. And so we started smaller with a piece down here and how people will move from one end to the other, and it could be with an alcoholic beverage, it could not. And if you notice, Lock 3 used to have this fence in here because it was a fenced off area because we had these concerts down here, and you really couldn't move from one area to another. Well, the goal was to kind of expand that area, so if you're in and around Lock 3, you could move around a little bit easier. And it was really that restriction on where you could take alcohol. Not that we don't want one person responsibly to go from one place to another, but here you can move around a little bit. Dayton has them, Columbus has them, a lot of big cities have them. We thought it would be a welcome complement to the, you know, to the future events down here, and so we're excited about the Dora too. That's the exciting part too, is trying to design a place where people feel like they can come, they feel like they can relax, whether it's to go to a game, whether it's just this is, you know, Lock 3 is kind of our Central Park, so to speak, in a very miniaturized way, but parks are a place where it doesn't necessarily have to be sports related. It doesn't necessarily have to be event related. It can just be where you want to be, to enjoy yourself. And I think that's the important part, is that it doesn't matter what you want to do, there should be something to be able to fill that. But it's also on how better we connect the neighborhoods too, and how easily neighbors and people from neighborhoods can get down in and around here, not only have events in their neighborhood, but also down here. And that connected part, I think with the towpath and with everything else, I think that makes us that much more closer of a city, even given what we have with COVID and having to stay safe and wear a mask. To be able to do those things, I think eventually gives us good building blocks as to how we expand the city. Let's remove COVID from the equation too, because eventually we're going to get past that. And we are going to be able to gather again and fellowship again, have concerts, have those different things. What's the next big thing down here? It's always been downtown living. You know, we need people to be able to live down here. There's already a significant number that do, kind of on the south end, down that way, kind of on the north end, down that way, kind of over on, you know, off the canal in that way, in the landings. Now it's here, kind of right in the center, in the middle part, center and middle part. So when you have this, and you have the north end, and you have the law building, now you're really starting to start some capacity to be able to really have, I think, a lot of people centered down here that make it their home. And to me, that's the important part, is having people live down here and converting some of these buildings. That's not even including what Tony Tropy's done over at the Everett building and converting some of those to lofts. Now you start to create some mass, and I think that's the important part. That's our next step. And it's not even the next step, it's already happening.
Thank you once again for watching this episode of Around Akron with Blue Green. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or you just want to drop me an email, you can reach me at www.aroundakronwithbluegreen.com, or you can catch me on Facebook or on Instagram. Thank you, and have an amazing day.